The Minnesota Wild have just made Kirill Kaprizov the highest paid player in NHL history. And make no mistake, the trickle-down effect is going to be huge, especially for the best player in the game who's looking for a new deal of his own. Major news on this early edition of Insider Trading. CJ, break it down for us.
Well, it's a monster contract. And I think the first thing to understand here is this only comes together with a lot of different, I guess, collisions of factors going on in the league. Let's start with the obvious. Kirill Kaprizov is a special talent, a rare player that does not exist in too many other places around the league. But you've also got the rising salary cap coming, with it going to $95.5 million this season, $104 next year, $113.5 beyond that. This is a new environment for all players in the league in terms of what they can hope to be paid. And maybe the final one is that the Minnesota Wild were incredibly motivated to get this deal done. I'll give Caprizov and his agent credit. He turned down a $16 million per year offer on an 8-year deal last month, earlier in September. And at that time, I spoke to a number of people around the league who thought it would not get better for him. But boy, did it get much better. $8 million total over this contract. There's heavy signing bonuses involved in this. This is a monster payday for a player, and it really does move the bar forward in a significant way. This is $3 million per season more than Leon Draisaitl will be paid. This is a sizable jump for star players in the NHL.
Let's give it a little bit more perspective. That $17 million a year is $4.5 million a season, more than McDavid is making going into this year. But that deal was signed when the cap was a lot lower. At that point, McDavid got 16.6% of the cap. Caprizov is now going to be making 17.8% of the cap on his deal. If McDavid gets that same percentage, the Oilers would have to pay him $18.2 million starting next season. CJ, what's this do to Oilers and their attempted negotiation with McDavid on a new deal?
Well, it depends who you ask on this. I'll say, there's split opinions from the people I speak to and have spoken to this morning in the wake of the Kaprizov deal, in part because Connor McDavid is almost a unicorn, right? I mean, I think that there's accepted opinion around the league that Connor McDavid, if he played for the maximum 20%, which is what you're allowed under the rules of the league, if he got a $19.1 million, per year deal, which is the max right now, I think that would still be a fair contract. But the problem that the Oilers have and that he has when he's trying to imagine a future there at Edmonton is that they just probably can't build a winner if he takes that money, because they don't have as many key pieces of their team locked up long term. That's one thing that was also in place in Minnesota. They have some other good young players signed already, have some of their core, kind of locked in, and so they can extend to a level where they give Kirill Kaprizov $17 million. The other part of this, Connor McDavid's not likely to sign an 8-year deal. And if you look historically, players that sign for that length of time tend to get the highest AAV. When you're doing a shorter term deal, generally speaking, you see the overall number for a star player in terms of his annual value come down a little bit. And so, what it means for McDavid, I still think we're sorting through that. Certainly everyone would expect him to be the highest paid player when he signs his next contract. But I would caution anyone and say it's not a guarantee. I think there's a world if he signs a 2 or 3 or 4 year extension with the Oilers at some point before next July, that the actual cap number is lower than what Kirill Kaprizov signed today.
Okay, so we see Kaprizov come in and set the new high watermark. I understand that. But there are a lot of other guys looking for contracts right now. Jack Eichel, Kyle Connor. What does this do to negotiations across the league when this is the new highest paid player in the league?
Well, if anything, it should probably compel the teams to get some of those deals done. I know there's been, a lot of discussion between the Golden Knights and Jack Eichel, for example, and the position that the agents have been taking on that contract probably looks a little better today because they've been asking for a number quite a bit below $17 million has the Eichel camp. I would think over time this is certainly going to have an impact on the marketplace. When the next best wave of star players, forwards in particular, come due, they're going to be pointing to this $17 million number. It's hard to ignore it. What it does for some of these other deals that are kind of down the road already, if anything, I do think it should shuffle them towards the finish line because no one wants to mess with the idea, hey, if you take a big breath and step back from those talks, that maybe the numbers end up being higher over time. But we're in this really unique period, Gino, in the NHL where I still think, agents are a little bit reluctant to do deals. Teams are unsure what the right numbers are because we are going to see a reordering, a restructuring of what, a certain type of player gets paid. And this does, certainly arm other star players, other 50 goal scorers, even 100-point wingers. This gives them a new comparable to bring forward at the table. So it might not be felt immediately, is kind of what I'm getting at here. Jack Eichel could sign an 8-year extension in Vegas in the near future, and I think it will be well below the $17 million number. But the players that come, next summer and the summer after that with star power are going to have some pretty powerful negotiating power in their back pocket.
What about the speed? Does this accelerate these guys who are sitting, waiting for contract extensions, waiting to negotiate? Oftentimes in the past, we've seen, we were all waiting for Caprizov. As you mentioned, when he turned down that $16 million a season deal, we were wondering, what's this going to do to the other current negotiations? Now that's happened. Is the dam broken? Beyond the numbers themselves, do we see an acceleration now in the extending and re-signing of these guys who are waiting for new contracts?
I think it will, and this is just my personal opinion on this one. But, when you look at it, we just have to get used to what the number is that you attach to a star player, to a difference maker on your team. I mean, the reality is there's 32 teams in the league. There's not 32 players in the entire league anywhere near as good as Kirill Kaprizov or Jack Eichel for that matter. And so, I think whether it's Kyle Connor, who needs a new deal in Winnipeg, and I know the Jets and Connor's camp have been engaged on trying to get a contract done there. I mean, each negotiation has almost got its own dynamics, and there are sort of things that make each one a little bit unique. But the big picture here is hard to ignore. That's that NHL teams are going to have to get used to paying star players a lot more money than they have in the past. I mean, this goes part and parcel with a growing league, with more money going into owners' pockets. Eventually, some more trickles down to the players. And, we might be entering an era now where stars are actually going to take up more percentage of that cap, even as the cap grows up. Maybe that's what we should be reading into this Kaprizov deal. 17, 18% might become more of a norm than it's been in the past, because the reality is when the cap was flat through those COVID years, the star players were relatively benign. Connor McDavid set the bar at $12.5 million, 7 and a bit years ago on his 8-year extension at that time. That was the high watermark for a long time. He saw McKinnon go a little bit over it. Austin Matthews came beyond that. He pushed it forward a bit. Ultimately, Draisaitl inched it up. Well, this has just been raised in a significant manner, and I think it's going to benefit all of the star players in the league in time.
CJ, thanks for giving us a perspective on this new groundbreaking deal. Again, Kirill Kaprizov, the highest paid player in NHL history, 8 years at $17 million a season. Lots more on this with CJ, Dregs, and Pierre coming up on the full edition of Insider Trading on SportsCenter.